what I did at the time was I uploaded his email because I had it in that group, and I took some other guesses as to maybe other alternative emails he might have, and then I put a bunch of dummy emails in a file, a CSV file, and uploaded it to Facebook ads as a custom audience. And I basically just retargeted him until he told me that I could interview.
No
Yeah,
way.
they were like, "Who is this dude? No one's ever done this before."
I wanted to start with you actually started in accounting, right? Like you studied accounting in college, and then you went to PwC, right? And then you went on to Caterpillar. So I want to hear a little bit about that, and whether you liked accounting at all, and like what that was like those first couple of years of your career.
Yeah, so it started when I originally wanted to go to college for marketing, but my dad told me no one hires people with marketing majors, and he's like, you should only do accounting or finance. That's the only people we hire at our company. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll just do accounting then. So I always wanted to, and I did enjoy some components of accounting. However, it just wasn't for me in the first place. But now I'm happy because the financial discipline and the skill of auditing financials is very helpful in what I'm doing now. So it all worked out. But on the second day of my, on like the third day of Caterpillar, what I was doing cost accounting there, and I did audit at PwC, and I was like, okay, those are the two of the three main sides of accounting. I hate both of them. I'm going to do my own thing. So I quit Caterpillar at the time and then moved across the country, actually to here, Boulder, Colorado. And I got a job at a cell phone recycling company here, helping building out their pricing model for and their online e-commerce operations. So we would acquire phones that AT&T people trade in at like Verizon, AT&T. And we would
Uh-huh.
bid on those. So I built the pricing model for that for acquisition, and then we would resell them on our e-com site. So it was kind of like, wasn't drop shipping, but it was sort of middle manning the recycled phones industry. So that's how I kind of stumbled into this whole space in general.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Um, but you were doing marketing for them, the cell phone company.
Yeah, I was really, because it was a small company, I was really doing accounting, marketing, operations. Yeah, basically they're like, hey, there's this weekly bid. Every week AT&T puts thousands of phones up for hundreds of thousands sometimes of phones up for bid.
Yeah.
And all of these companies like theirs bid on these lots of phones. And it's kind of like a hodgepodge of you don't know what you're going to get. They're just going to ship them to you, and you have to uh, usually repair them, put on new components and whatnot, and then you can resell them. So I built out the pricing model using knowledge I had from cost accounting of like, hey, built-in depreciation, here's the return that we're looking for, here's the risk values and that sort of thing. And then from there, once we bought them, I'd I'd experienced with like eBay before, but that was about it. So eBay and various other e-commerce kind of sites, Rakuten, I think at the time, was my first foray into selling stuff online.
Interesting. So it's almost like kind of like the flipping stuff, how people flip on eBay nowadays, except like a larger scale.
Yep, exactly. Did that for about a year, and that's when I was listening to podcasts, probably like yours, Entrepreneur on Fire, a bunch of other ones too. And I'm like, hey, like I could probably, do this myself and go off, and I have the ambition for it. So that's what I did for about 3 months to 3 to 4 months after I left that company. I was like, hey, I'm just going to do my own thing. And that was my first agency. I was chasing so many business plays at once, just trying to make anything work. And had clients I hated, terrible, terrible clients that I would do anything for. And eventually I wasn't making that much, like $3,000-4,000 a month.
What kind of services were you offering? Because like so you
Yeah,
left
anything.
to flip
And
stuff on your own, and how did that spin into like an agency? Was it just like you were
yeah,
trying to make money at the time, and like that
yeah.
was kind of like
So agency is always good for short-term cash flow because you can
yeah.
get retainers up front. So I remember because I had told my wife, hey, uh, if I don't make $4,000 a month consistently, I will quit and go back and get another job. And she gave me like 3 months or something.
Oh
So
shit.
I was
Pressure's on.
Yeah, I was selling because I knew how to advertise on Facebook a little bit, not very well yet. So I was trying to sell that as an agency service. I was also sourcing cell phone cases because I realized that when I was there, our margin was really good on things that when AT&T included it, they would sometimes include just the case on it, like an OtterBox or a LifeProof, and I saw how much that could go for. So started sourcing cases, and I was just trying to get to $4,000 a month in any way means possible. And I would sit down there, and it was on my whiteboard behind me. And anytime I made any sort of sale, I would go up on the chalkboard and just kind of bubble it a little bit further. So those were the days, but it was super stressful. And I hated everything about it. And I was just barely making any money. And that's when Clever Investor posted the job title for director of marketing. And me and Cody were in the same like mastermind Facebook group thing in some capacity. I forget what group it was, but he posted it, and I tried to hustle my way in, and it worked. So that story's funny, actually, too. If you want to know, I don't know how long this is long of a story you want.
I definitely want to hear that.
Yeah.
Who's Cody Sperberg? Just for people that don't know.
Cody Sperber is the Clever Investor on Instagram, which is probably his biggest social, and he teaches real estate and is a very successful house flipper himself. Had flipped over 1,000 houses. I hadn't heard of him at the time when he posted the job.
Really? You
Yeah, I
just through the
high growth
Facebook group.
company looking for director of marketing, and I remember checking his site out and be like, "Huh, this is crazy! Like he's doing this while selling education." And it was my first kind of aha moment there. So yeah, he. What I did is applied for the job. He reached out to me directly and he said, "Hey man, I really appreciate your hustle or whatever. But honestly, did you even read the role description? We're looking for someone with like 10 years of experience with like 50 applicants. Uh, thank you, but no." So
Kudos
yeah,
for him for answering, like just
he
like a
did.
nobody at the time, right?
Right. So I think it helps we're in the same Facebook group because otherwise he probably wouldn't have said that. So I appreciated the hustle, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep pushing. So what I did at the time was I uploaded his email because I had it in that group, and I took some other guesses as to maybe other alternative emails he might have. And then I put a bunch of dummy emails in a CSV file, and uploaded it to Facebook ads as a custom audience. And I basically just retargeted him until he told me that I could interview.
No
So
way.
yeah, so that's usually my style. Is like I just I want. Whenever you get a first no, I usually just try to keep pushing so long as it's done. And it was humorous. I made my own landing page that described me and how I was going to bring value to Clever Investor. And Cody was on the creative, and it just followed around the internet for probably a few days.
What were the ads like?
Yeah, they were like, "Who is this dude? No one's ever done this before."
So kind of like sensationalist, but almost like mockumentary style like ad, you know?
Yeah. And then I was also messaging him on top of the ads running. I was like, "Hey, have you seen the ads yet?" And he's like, "Yeah, how are you doing that?" Then I was like, "Cool, I'll be down in Arizona next week. Could I interview?" And I hadn't booked a flight or anything. And he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess you could come in then." So then I booked a flight, went down there, got the job, and yeah, the rest is history.
Wow. And so the ads were enough to be like, yeah, damn, this guy can hustle. Like I mean, he knows stuff I don't know, and he's hungry. Let's bring him on.
That was enough to get me in the door. They were still skeptical though, because at the time, I mean, it was no joke. I was 23 at the time, barely any Facebook ads experience of relevance. I knew how to do things like that. But yeah, so and they
That's
gave me
wild.
another test, which I still do have and can send to you right now, called the test of wits, where they really wanted to see, does this guy actually know anything about marketing? Because I was going to have to be writing head copywriter, writing daily emails, setting up funnels, email drips, Facebook ads, various other things, right? So I still have it. So here is the original Clever Investor test.
Test
And
of wits.
test of wits. Yeah, that's what they called it. Provide feedback on a sales page. Let's see how this is probably pretty terrible. Definitely a thing I would improve on the sales page. Segment your email. Okay. Are you interested in buying? Do you think? Huh? That's good advice. Copywriting. Made me write 2 emails for Clever. They will be in the voice of Cody, and they will promote this product deal automator. Here's his persona. So I wrote this and then that. And then lastly, they had me do a lot. Create 3 Facebook ad concepts. It's a link to our replay page.
But this was all remote, right? So you had the time to like kind of like do the research and kind of like really put something solid together, right?
Yeah, I did. I took a lot of time on this, probably about 8 hours total to take this. Yep, and then made this ad myself and was just doing them on my own business manager to mock them up so they could see. That's I've improved a lot over the years. This is a pretty generic headline that I would probably crush people here if they wrote something like that.
Just for people that are listening and not watching, what's the headline? Free training, how to generate real estate leads and
sales on autopilot. Yeah, it's just overdone and saturated and generic. It's fine. It just doesn't cut through the noise. So they gave me that.
It got you the job.
Yep, man, they asked me a lot. And then problem solving, how would you fix this problem? Google Analytics isn't tracking in funnels. How do you blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that was it. And then from there, I think that they were like, yeah, we'll take a risk on this guy. So
did they give you like a trial period when you joined?
Yeah, it was 3 months. So, and that's something that I've maintained too, which I always think is a good idea, is they're like, hey, I was a contractor for 3 months because I was remote. And they're like, if it goes really well these 3 months, then we want you to come on full time, move down to Phoenix. So they were a client, I suppose, at first, but they were pretty much my full focus because I was like, I have to get in and do this. Otherwise, I'm going to be going back to all these other people that I don't want to deal with. So I gave up on entrepreneurship and went and worked for 2 people, Clever and Sam at consulting. And I'm honestly so happy I did. I feel like a lot of people with entrepreneurial ambition don't do that sort of thing. And it really accelerated my success and my learnings, put me in the position of where I am now.
That's really interesting you say that. So why like what's the value of going to work with someone like that? Because that's a big thing of the show that I want to convey is like the value of like going to work for like someone that's been there, done that started a business, and it seems like a lot of people that have like entrepreneurial tendencies like end up in these jobs like thriving and like really building like a solid skill set. So I really want to hear your take on that.
Why it's good for you in general is because my clients that I had on my first agency were spending roughly $100 to $200 a day type ad budgets. Like
peanuts.
Yeah, it's good. And when I walked into Clever, Cody, the first thing Cody told me is like, hey, we're spending like $800 a day on Facebook. We should be spending like $2,000, I think. He's like, so how fast can you get us there? And we have the budget to do it. So just push and scale. I was like, cool. So the learnings come faster. So spending $2,000 a day on ads versus $200 a day is really a 10x in how it speeds up your learning. Like you will learn with bigger budgets so much quicker than you will, low ones. So when I left Clever, we were spending, I don't know, $5,000 to $6,000 a day. Nothing crazy now by today's standards, perhaps, but that alone put years of experience gap between me and maybe similar people my age who are spending lower. So, and that's normally what you do if you come out of college and want to be an entrepreneur or run an agency. You're just going to get maybe bottom of the barrel clients.
Yeah, definitely. And where were you guys at when you joined the team? Like, how big was the team when you joined, and like revenue wise, and then when you left, and what was what was that whole growth period like?
Yeah, so it was fun. I was employee number 16 at Clever. and was the director of marketing, and uh, didn't have any employees though, so I had to build my own team from that point. And yeah, so 16 people, 5.4 million was the rev that they had done the prior year of when I came in. That next year we did, it's on Inc. because we made the Inc. list. I want to say like 9 or 10. And then the prior year after that, 16. So we went from 5.4 to 16 in 2 years, made the Inc. 5,000 lists, I think Inc. 1,000 or something for Clever those 2 years, which was cool. And I failed at building, mainly failed a lot at building my own marketing team and managing for the first time. And I'm still learning a lot of management lessons, but yeah,
What kind of failures are we talking?
so hiring people and then doing their jobs for them, because I had some insecurity about like wanting people to know how good I was at everything. So I would hire them, not train them at all, like, and just basically let them fail, um, which is toxic. So, but yeah, because Cody too at the time, he can be a tough and demanding boss to work for. He's very A type, drives hard, and I respond well to that. And perhaps I didn't want to appear weak or something like that. I just would always say yes to anything that he told me. Any like thing, he's like, "Hey, can you get this done by tomorrow?" I'm like, "Yes." And then I would do my employees' jobs, not train them. I wasn't doing any one-on-ones, any reviews, a lot of stuff that, looking back now, would be funny to me, but that's the way it went. And one of the biggest learning lessons that I learned was when I left Clever, uh, when I went and left to go work with Sam, that really screwed me over. And I ended up basically with no one to replace me, feeling really bad, drove a wedge between me and Cody and the team for multiple months. And I had to basically, I felt bad enough that I was like, "Hey, we'll try to find my replacement. I'll help train them too." So I was actually, when I first started consulting, flying back to Arizona on occasionally to help train their team. But yeah, so
Thanks for sharing that. When like why did you leave because of like some of those kind of like failures and the hardships, or like why did you leave the team? I mean,
yeah,
obviously it was to join another opportunity as well, but
it was a really hard decision because I had made the connection with Sam while at Clever, because of the many things I was doing. Cody usually wanted to line up an affiliate promo per week,
uh-huh.
or cross promo, or some sort of, besides cold traffic, affiliate traffic. So Sam, I had met doing that. I remember the first headline and copy I saw from him, it was a Facebook ad, and I was like, "Huh, that's really good." People usually aren't that good at writing copy, a lot of times. And I reached out to him, found out his product was great by most people's standards, and we promoted Clever Consulting. So he was a JV partner, and he we kind of developed a relationship over the course of the year. And then at some point he told me, "Hey, I just bought consulting.com, the domain," because he was just Sam Ovens at the time. "Would you be interested in coming out to New York and starting this operation?" Just had leased an office, spent about 300K on the fit out. I was like, "Dang, dude, this is great." So he was finally wanting to build a team for the first time, because he was just solo. And one of the big factors was I looked at what we had done at Clever, and we got to 16 million with 50, 60 headcount, and he had done it by himself and was just working so much. He was almost, I remember talking to him at like 4 a.m., 3 a.m. some nights, when I was at Clever, because it's the only time he could talk. He was doing all of his work, then handling all of the support tickets
Holy shit.
and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, Sam is one of the hardest workers I've ever been around, in general. Very consistently hardworking.
Yeah.
So that inspired me. So did various other things and the opportunity. But it was a really hard decision. I sat on it for a couple weeks, really thinking about, should I leave, talked to a few people I really trusted, and then made the jump. It was tough.
So what did he have like when like before you joined before consulting.com? Like he had the product already. He was doing consulting as well. Like
Yeah,
what was he
yeah.
doing exactly? Like what was his business?
He was. So Sam had been through a few iterations, and what he was selling was Consulting Accelerator, what we now call 1.0, the first version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we launched consulting.com, we launched with the 2.0 version and the website that's currently there today. So it was a huge, huge overhaul because the 1.0 course was good. But if I remember right, it was something like 20 to 40 hours. 2.0 became 120 plus hours of content. And we did some really cool things. Like we launched with 3,000 video reviews, which was something else that
Wow.
I don't think I've seen anyone come close. That might be one of the most impressive things of like, if you know how hard it is to get video testimonials, you know that 3,000 is a ton of happy people. And those are all still up today. So we were all about transparency of customers. And he taught me a lot on the product side. Like at Clever, I learned so much about marketing. From Sam, I learned the importance of product and actually how to create education that drives success as opposed to uh, a lot of people want to drive community and they'll make a course not caring about the students' results, but the students' feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as a retention tactic, Sam, as consulting, we did both. So I kind of started when I first got there. I didn't do any marketing for 3 months. Sam, like we were consulting, hadn't launched yet. Sam's like, I'm shutting down samovens.com so we can both just focus on product. And then every day he would record the course videos as I was collecting reviews and writing the copy for all the reviews on there for the most part. So yeah, for the first 3 months, I was like, man, when are we gonna like start making money again?
So
Yes,
is that was the main thing you were doing, like first 3 months, like collecting like customer
yeah,
reviews and
we weren't even selling the product anymore. So it was funny. I got there and he shut it down. We were building the office, hiring team. Sam was shooting the course videos. We were talking about the outline for what we wanted the webinar to be when we relaunched. We spent 30 days on that consulting webinar alone.
wow. What
And a
what
lot.
goes into that?
If it's me and Sam, a lot of research normally. Most people do them faster and they can be successful faster, but
But like
we were,
let's go into the nitty gritty, like because like that's part of the reason it was so successful, right? Because you guys put so much time into the research and stuff. So
I think so. It's hard to know in hindsight because there's so many factors, but I think for me, I can't speak for Sam. I was really, really excited because I usually get forced rush to write VSLs and webinars, and I'm never happy. I'm usually a perfectionist. I want to hold on to them for a long time.
yeah, with
And
Cody, it seems like it was
it
like
was, yeah,
momentum, like let's keep moving.
all about
Versus here, it's
speed.
like
Yeah,
take your time, like make it perfect.
exactly. And that's Sam's style too. So we paired really well together on that. And we were spending 10 hours a day for a month on that webinar, and we would outline different concepts and ideas. I had surveyed all of our students, so we were reading through individual feedback from the last one, where the course was weak, the 1.0 version, like what they actually wanted, what their pain points were. A bunch of Dan Kennedy's market research doc was one of the things among others that we used, and I have a bunch of resources, various others things of how we plan that. But once we got the big idea, the hook that we knew most people wanted. Took us a long time to flesh out what we were going to teach, and then the hero story too took a long time, and it's a really long webinar. Have you ever seen it before?
Yeah,
It's about 500 slides and 3 hours long. And I remember telling Sam at the time, I was like, I don't think this is actually going to work. Like I think we over researched this and overthought it and just tried to put everything in this. And I think Sam told me this is going to be the stairway of heaven of webinars, aka like a 7 to 9 minute song that still gets radio play. And he was right, and it turned out it was great, right? Even right off of launch. And by 3 months later, it was even better because of all the split tests and kind of A/B stuff we were running.
interesting. What
Mhm.
else did you learn from Sam?
A lot. He taught me a lot about work consistency. Like I was always willing to match someone. until I burnt out and like crashed on the couch, like 24 hours up straight, working on something. But I saw Sam do 6 days a day, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., always be sharp for work. And yeah, that taught me to be a bit more structured with my life, because I tend to be, if I let myself out of that mindset, more chaotic in how I attack work. And he's probably one of the best book recommender I've ever had in my life. As far as, he's like, hey, I think you'll really like this. You'll get a lot of value. So, and that's how he learned a lot. So a lot of the lessons that I learned through Sam often were through books, or books we both were reading at the same time. Principles by Ray Dalio both influenced us a lot as far as transparency goes, and compensation. There, and then another thing, Sam, yeah, so much. But one thing he taught me is on Q&A calls, like either this or an interview, is that it's better to be concise and definitive with people on what they should do, as opposed to give them optionality. So what I was really good at doing when I would occasionally do some Q&A calls at consulting, was someone would be like, hey, should I do YouTube ads? And I'd be like, well, it depends. Like, are you running Facebook? And have a million follow-up questions for them. Because I understand there's nuance in the situation. Where Sam taught me, he'd be like, no, you shouldn't. He's like, just focus on Facebook ads. Get really good at that, and you'll know when it's time to open up a new channel. If you're asking us this question, it's too early. And I was like, man. So that works really well. Occasionally can backfire in situations, I guess, where more nuance is needed. But he is so good at telling people what they actually need to hear. And I tried to do that now too. So sometimes I watched him often when people asked him questions, he said, that's a bad question. What you should really be asking is this. So he'd reframe the question and teach them how to think, as opposed to answering their question. And
So
a lot of people in our space are guilty of just answering questions.
It makes me think of Tom a lot. I think he does that as well. Where it's like, I mean, it's kind of like what you would expect from a leader as well, right? Where it's like, to actually make the decision and kind of like help you choose like what path to take,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
You mentioned Ray Dalio principles. I was curious, and you also mentioned that Sam and you had like a very symbiotic relationship as far as like being introverted and stuff. I'm curious, and I know Ray is really big on personality tests. Yeah, same here. Are you guys like both the same personality profile?
Yep. So Myers-Briggs, Sam is INTJ, I'm INTP.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the INTP-INTJ relationship in general is, I think, really fun. A lot of my closest good friends, one of them is an INTJ. And yeah, the only thing that's troubling is that both neither me or Sam, when those are two of the people in leadership, and then also our general manager is an INTJ, is that we had no one really wanted to run the office. So what they generally say is that your golden pairing for like an INTP is an ENTJ. So you still get the NTJ and NTJs tend to be more structured, disciplined, regimented in how they approach work. They often appear to be icy cold on surface level, which a lot of people say about Sam, as he looks like an emotionless robot, which we always just thought was funny. Never took offense by that. In fact, we were often joking. We were trying to think about some PR stunt where we would actually tell people Sam was a robot and like rebuild a cloned robotic version of him or something. So that's the INTJ. INTP myself tends to be more, like I said, more chaotic, more possibilities. Normally my head is just usually full of ideas too. And on the downside, a lot of INTPs have problems with procrastination, followed by short bursts of like intense output and stuff like that. So I try to be aware of it. But yeah, the INTJ ENTP mix is the kind of the gold standard there. But it was still fun. We were probably missing an office leader, because when Sam would often sometimes he wouldn't leave his apartment for like 2 weeks because he was just creating course videos every single day. And if he was doing that, I had to kind of lead and play COO-ish role, which I'm not naturally suited for too. So, and there's a bunch of other funny things about that office culture too, which we loved. We like burned incense every day. We listened to binaural beats and generally had random old like Michelangelo busts with lasers coming out of his eyes. Yeah, I have some pictures if you want to see that too. It was a really cool office concept that Sam had designed in his head, and yeah, it was a fun time right on Madison Avenue, and we were just writing copy, making good products, and trying to change the world, I suppose.
How big was the team around the time you left?
30-ish headcount between contractors and employees. And that was one of the things that when I got to consulting, I told Sam is, hey, I saw Clever grow from this to this. I don't really know how to do everything, but I've at least seen where we screwed up in that growth trajectory. So I got to help. That's maybe one of, I don't know what Sam would say about me, but maybe one of the main ways I drove value was like, hey, these are the mistakes that we ran into. Let's not avoid them. And we made the organization lean because of it. So with about 30 headcount, we were doing 30 million annual pace by the time I left, and just come off a year where we did 26. So it was
That is
really
just
good.
crazy.
Per employee was off the charts.
As far as consulting, I think you stayed there for 2 years, right?
2 years.
What led to you leaving? Because it seems like you're having like a really great time.
So I'm super passionate about what we were doing in consulting, and the roadmap kind of shifted. What me and Sam originally wanted to do was build the company up to 50 million just with 3 course products, like our 3 products doing 50 million, which is feasible. That would have happened. We were getting there. Like we were already running at 30 million. But then what we wanted to do was build tech, do kind of the Brunson model. And we were trying to determine what play that was going to be. And I was fighting for an LMS, like a Kajabi or a Teachable or something like that, because I wanted to be able to sell to our students immediately. And the consulting, when I say sometimes I just still think I'm at consulting, so just ignore that.
Totally can relate.
Right. So our LMS that we built in-house is really, really cool and good and has a lot of features that Kajabi Teachable other solutions don't have. So I was like, well, the code base needed reworked, a bunch of other things, but that is a product I knew we already had product market fit for. And that's what I wanted to pursue. And that was going to be the idea for a while until Sam got the idea for school.com, which I linked you to, which is basically how he puts it on that splash page is it's like Facebook groups, but better. And that's where the consulting communities are now. So all of them migrated off Facebook groups into School, which is Facebook groups, but with some of the functionality of like Quora, Reddit, and some other really cool features that haven't launched yet, to my knowledge, with School, but are going to be really cool. So
is
Sam,
this kind of like a circle.so type thing?
Yes, it is. It's like, I'm not sure if the features are the same, but it's the same concept. Is that the problem would be Facebook groups suck for putting your people in there. We have something, and a core concept that we talked about early on for School, that became the idea for School, was that what's the best way to learn from someone, and how do you know people in your community? How do you differentiate good advice from bad advice when someone says in the Facebook group? And that is a bigger problem. The problem that Sam's going after is a bigger problem than the one I wanted to go after. Like Sam's seeing $1 billion exit for School if he does it right. Potentially, it's a social media network. It could be, if done right, a Quora Facebook groups kind of killer, right? But if it doesn't, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to monetize it because a lot of people monetize social networks with ads. So I was, the philosophy, and it was a hard call. I was like, I don't trust my ability as head of marketing, to be honest, to compete with those people. I've always done well in my career trying to be really, really good in industries where, not that the people aren't as smart, but that it's really hard to compete with venture-backed companies like that have funding. We were bootstrapped. We were using consulting's money to build school, and without investors or anything like that, I'm like, I don't know. Like, the team that Facebook hires is talented, and we just didn't have the money to hire that talented team. Seems like Sam's doing it though, because he was like, "Hey, he'll pretty much go bankrupt or broke trying to make school work. I know for a fact. Like,
I love
he'll,
that.
yeah." So I do too. I really respect it. That's the main reason I left, and that's the main reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I am just publishing brands still, because my passion is in finding experts. It doesn't matter what area they're in, but I'm not a subject matter expert myself, so I usually attach myself to those people, and I'm like, hey, I'll help you with the marketing operations, everything else. I just love business, and you do what you love. So the brands that I have co-ownership in, or the brands that we do as a company, are in the real estate space. We're launching a music production course, sleep consulting, a bunch of different variety of things that just they're all business plays, but they're all passion plays at the same time too.
Of yours, when you say passion
Yeah,
plays.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I try to find, if it's not a market, an area I'm not passionate about, I'll get passionate about it if the person is world class or has a desire to be world class.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come with time. And that's sort of how it is with me with yeah, with like sleep, for instance, which had we launched it once and it's going to relaunch again this year. It's teaching people how to sleep better,
What is it
which at the
called?
time, the website's not up right now.
Oh,
It
okay.
was, yeah, it's going to actually be rebranded under a different name when it launches. But I'll send it to you when it's launched. But it's going to teach babies how to sleep better, which is not something I'm particularly passionate about, but I became passionate about, especially when I had my first kid and went through this same problem. So, whenever I see someone else so mission driven, I get behind the mission too. So that's sort of how I feel. That's our mission here at Agexa, is we just want to, in 40 years, if I look back and I've acquired an amazing collection of expert business partners that do all these really cool things, that's kind of my definition of success, more so than anything else.
That's very cool. It's
Yeah.
super exciting, man, just hearing you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So like you build like you're building an agency, but it's almost seems like you're building like a business conglomerate at the same time, right? Like in parallel.
Yeah, it sounds way cooler than what we actually are, to call it a business conglomerate. But yeah, we can call it a conglomerate. Yes, but a collection of brands, all decentralized for sure. And the agency actually, Dakota, my business partner Dakota, is very passionate about client services, because I originally saw the agency as just a way to cash flow the brands we were building. So like when I started Agexa, I didn't pay myself for the first 3 months of the company. We were not making much money at all, and I wanted to hire the people that I wanted to hire, because I wanted a good team first and a good basis. So I was on a burn, and we just took clients by necessity. And once we were positive, like once the brand started yielding money for us that we were starting, I was like, hey, do we want to sunset the agency? Because I never wanted to have a marketing agency. In fact, if anyone who's watching this has been through consulting course videos, me and Sam were both so anti-agency usually, and how we talked. We just felt like no one should ever do client services. And I've now, a year and a half later, learned that was just my own bias too, because certain people are passionate about it and plays to their strengths. And I also used to have the belief that, why wouldn't everyone just want to build their own internal team instead of hiring an agency? And that's also just not everyone's desire. And the subject matter expertise, variety of other reasons. Needless to say, I've gotten over it. But yeah, I used to look down on people that had agencies. Really dumb.
If you had advice for the Nick that was just like graduating out of his accounting degree right now,
Uh,
um, what would it be, like knowing everything you know?
Hopefully this isn't too difficult of an answer. I wouldn't have talked to him, because I would have wanted life to go exactly how it did. Even the mistakes I made, I'm happy for. And like things that I could have regrets about, I needed to learn anyway. So I'm glad it all shook out the way it did. But yeah, that's probably too idealistic of an answer. Maybe I would have told myself something. Certainly the biggest like reason like that would be, it would be really hard. I think I would have kept my mouth shut ultimately, because I think that I would have misinterpreted whatever I would have said to my younger self. Like even if you said something like stay true to your heart, I probably wouldn't have ended up here either, because there did things that I wasn't passionate about, or I wasn't, my heart wasn't in it. And I also think that I'm better for that. So it's really hard. Sorry for giving you a non-answer.
That's great. That's great. What if you had to give advice to like someone else?
So now we go back to the same conundrum that I talked about with me and Sam too. That normally what I would do is, can I ask more questions? Because the advice, part of what, especially my personality type plays well too, is I really care about nuance, and I really care about, and I understand that everyone's different. So giving blanket advice is generally not good. There is a few blanket advice that I will give though, which is the biggest thing that everyone could do is don't always go, not only for shiny objects, but short-term gratification is enticing. But the one common trait I've noticed among not just successful entrepreneurs, but anyone who is successful in a craft, is that they delay short-term gratification for long-term rewards. So like if you're looking for, like me, like going back to work for someone seems like a step back, it doesn't have to be. In fact, it usually isn't, if you know what you're doing. So I even thought about that at Clever. I'm like, man, do I just jump? And when you're working for someone, you know that they have to get a return on, their investment on their employees. So usually you could go make more yourself in a perfect world as an entrepreneur, potentially. But I always try to remind myself, I have a lot to learn. I'm not ready yet. And maybe even now I waited too early. Maybe I should have kept working for someone else. You never know. But the longer you delay gratification in order to invest in yourself or put you in a position to succeed, build your network, I think that plays out for you 100% of the time.
As far as building a team, you're saying that when you were at Clever, you made a lot of mistakes. You probably learned a bunch at consulting as well, like building the team up to where it was when you left. What lessons have you implemented now? Like now that you're building like a team from scratch, your own team this time at Agexa.
Yeah. So the lessons I'm learning right now that I had missed, I guess I'll give a quick rundown. At Clever, I learned what I told you. At consulting, both me and Sam learned the importance of what we called poaching was part of our hiring strategy, because both me and him had failed miserably. Me at Clever, him somewhere like his own business at hiring. Like I think Sam at one point before me hired like 10 people to help him, and they all quit or were fired or something. He has a low tolerance for incompetence too, which doesn't help. So when we got together, we're like, we're just going to poach successful people, because neither of us seem to know how to hire very well. And that worked. Like my best employees were poached. And also the other thing that we learned about a team is getting them to move for the role told us a lot. And everyone who did that was a top performer. So me and Sam would almost intentionally go out of our way to try to, we were in New York. We're like, hey, would you just move out to New York to prove yourself? Like come out here. And if they did, I was like, man, yeah, they're committed.
They're hungry.
And I'm trying to think of the consulting team, the top performers like Rhett Coots, who lived with Sam, was his personal coach and started in our support team and ended up living with him and then running sales for a bit. Came from Australia. Sid, our data scientist, took a red-eye train from like upstate New York in order to interview with Sam when Sam put him in a crunch. Like, hey, I have tomorrow free. Can you come? I came from Arizona. One of my one of the media buyers, Jordan, who has his own successful agency now, came from California to New York cross country, left all of his family behind. Tommy, who is now fortunate enough to call a business partner, was also a great media buyer for us at consulting. He came from Pennsylvania, and I'm sure I could think of a few other examples, but it was learn those two lessons, and it's somewhat anecdotal, but like it's pretty clear to me now, and I haven't really seen anyone that's done that's failed under me. And then the lessons I'm learning here now with Agexa is the importance of setting expectations and checking in with people. I'd never done one-on-one meetings before starting this company. I'd never done performance reviews. I had never done a lot of checking in with people. I'd always given my teams the same autonomy that I desired, which I know it doesn't actually help everyone. Some people want autonomy. Some people want to be micromanaged. Some people want to be somewhere in between. But everyone wants usually clear expectations of where they stand and how they can get better. And various other things, but that's a key one, is the importance of setting expectations. Client services the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest lesson that got beaten into me in the early days when we did agency, is you really got to be clear with people and write it down and remind people what the expectations are, because both sides will lose sight of, like, the times that we early on, they're like, hey, didn't you say that like we would be up to like $10,000 a day in 2 days or whatever example? I'm like, no, like we didn't say that, but neither of us had it down in writing. There wasn't contracts. In the early days, I did everything on handshake agreements until it screwed me over enough times. And our accounts receivable was over 100K. And I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I can't do this anymore.
That's when you learn to get really good with contracts then.
Yeah, we're still not really good with contracts, but at least we have them. So yeah, and they're good. Like now I don't see them as a sign of mistrust, which I used to, is like, hey, like you trust me, right? Like we don't need a contract. Like write an email and say what the agreement is, but we don't need a contract. And now I realize that even people that have good relationships, even people I trust deeply, you still need contracts, because humans are all subject to just remembering things wrong.
Yeah. What about I saw on your website you guys like all have like your like all your personality types listed, not just Myers-Briggs, but like DISC and like an Enneagram. Yeah. Like what is that from Principles, Ray Dalio, or because I know we did that at Impact Theory as well.
Hey, you're the first person who's ever noticed that. They are 2 of the 3 are from Ray Dalio. So Dalio does Team Dimensions, which we do, Myers-Briggs, which we do, and then he does something called SST, which is something I would love to do, but it takes about, I think it's like $25K to have it implemented. And they come in and they assess your whole team at once. It's a very in-depth, more than a test. So the one we do not in lieu of SST, but in addition, I guess, would be Enneagram. Enneagram is probably the most important one for personal relationships, whether it's client services or internal with the team. So I use Enneagram for breaking down and making people more empathetic, usually. And I use Team Dimensions for trying to build a well-rounded organization that has people that excel in different functional areas. And Myers-Briggs is, well, how most people use Myers-Briggs is wrong, but I don't want to talk about it too much because I'll go down a loophole. Basically, if anyone's interested in how Myers-Briggs should be used, look up cognitive functions and understand your cognitive functions, and it'll help you play to your strengths in business or life in general.
Do you have everyone like read each other's personality test? Like, is it mostly for the leaders, or like what's the like? How do you guys actually use this stuff?
Yep. So let me share my screen here. This is Team Dimensions. This is a Ray Dalio put us onto this test. This is it's missing 1 or 2 people here at Agexa now, but this is all us graphed on Team Dimensions, and it's a matrix. And the theory behind it is that there's 4 types. It almost mirrors DISC because the same the same research and scientists and companies behind both tests.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like dominant, influence or impact, conscientiousness, and advancing, you're either a creator or an advancer, an executor, a refiner. And the theory behind it is that in the first 4 hires of a company, you usually get one of these 4. You have usually the entrepreneur or the idea person is the creator. They have this idea, the vision, right? And they're cool with working with unclear goals, non-traditional ideas, very entrepreneurial up here, right? And then normally they might hire an advancer, someone who in the tech world would pitch the new idea to investors. They would network, they would hire the team, the stuff that's kind of done on this side. And then the third hire is usually a refiner. So now that they have an idea, they have investment, okay, is this actually like, let's actually get clear on what we're doing. And that's where I am, honestly, is I score right here. This is me. And most like pure entrepreneurs, which I always tell people, I'm not like the pure visionary at all. Like I've been second banana and been very happy with it. So I'm sort of a mix. Like I prefer though to refine ideas, and you can see kind of where my thing is here. This is my wheelhouse. If you have things in this area, I'm usually a good person to talk to and very passionate about that stuff. But yeah, doing research alone, analyzing work alone, that's what refiners do well. And then finally, now you have a refined plan with investment funding. You need just people to execute. So at that point, you hire usually maybe a COO, right? Or whatever that looks like. Salespeople are sometimes high execution. So
very interesting.
This is our organization, and I look at this maybe once a week, and we have it printed out in our office on a corkboard because over time, you can see where our blind spots are as a company. And
advancer.
I kid you not, these are our work. These are the areas at Agexa that we are very, very weak in, and we know we need to improve. Like we are training others, we're getting better, but none of us gravitate towards it. We just do it because we know it's very important. Planning events, yes, we are really terrible at doing that, or I'm really good at planning events and canceling them, and this sort of stuff. And we actually just offered someone today or yesterday, someone who is in this kind of area. So if they come in, they fill a huge need where we're also really bad in this box right here. Checking facts for accuracy, maintaining quality control.
Interesting. So that's between refiner and executor. There's like a spectrum kind of.
Yeah, there's a spectrum. Yeah, right. I'm on the spectrum. In between refiner and creator. I'm a refiner with a tendency towards creation is what they would call it on this test.
Do you know what's super weird is we have exactly the same personality spectrum like for all the tests. I'm like Enneagram 5, INTP, and I'm a refiner / creator. It's so weird.
So what I was going to say is you struck me as an INTP. I wasn't going to ask in case you didn't know, but a good chunk of INTPs are also Enneagram 5s. And it makes sense that you would sit there.
Are you guys hiring at Agexa? Just in case anyone's listening is interested?
Yeah, right now we're hired. Yeah, and especially 2 marketing positions. We're hiring a director level marketing position, and that person will be on the agency side of the business and should have, you can see it, all the requirements on agexa.com. But experience media buying, ideally experience managing budgets and has spent over $1 million in their career buying because you'll be training the juniors. What we have right now is kind of a gap between our very experienced people and our junior level, and we need someone to sit in between. And then we're also hiring one junior, which we're calling a marketing manager position on the website, a head of business development, and there is a head of ops position. That one might be gone because we are in the final stages of candidates there, but there will always be more. Hopefully we keep growing. That's my goal. uh, until it becomes not fun anymore. Then we'll stop. But yeah, for right now, that's on the careers page.
And you're expecting everyone to retarget you via Facebook ads, right?
No, I I don't expect that, but I would definitely respect it because that means they would have heard about it on this podcast. First time I've ever talked about it publicly. So uh, that would be cool. That would show me a level of commitment and depth, I suppose, and I would at least give them a chance, even if they were inexperienced. And I tend to, me personally, and not everyone, not all those positions report to me. Only one of them will, but I still, at this stage, interview everyone who are thinking about hiring here, and I always look for. I don't really care about experience too much. Um, I feel like other people really value experience. I really value resilience, grit, and passion of learning, which is like if I see someone who's like, man, I stayed up till like 3 a.m. just reading everything I could about like funnels or whatever, I'm like, okay, this person's gonna win if we put them in that role by sheer just passion. They'll get there. Like it's just a matter of time. So that's what I would say. But of course, if you're not like that too, also apply. That's just my opinion. And now with a team and group hiring process, it's cool to see. And oftentimes I'm letting people make not their own mistakes. That'd be a bad way of saying it. Just their own decisions, because I've been like, hey, I prefer that candidate, that one. They're on the flip side. And our group environment dynamic is like, hey, you're managing them. You make the final call. It's not me. It's not the CEO. Like you have to live with that hire. Otherwise, it's just going to be my person that you think that I made you hire, and you're going to make an excuse if they don't work out. So that's kind of a little bit of the leadership philosophy here. Our core values are on our site too. You guys should all check those out because they're all named after Drake songs, which probably are the first company to do that, but they all mean a lot to us and they govern the way we work and operate here.
Very cool. That's awesome, man.
Yep.
I really appreciate your time, man. This was awesome.
Yeah,
There's so much knowledge.
I appreciate you too.
There you have it. I hope you got something out of this interview. I'm really trying to make this as valuable as possible to you. So if you have any feedback on how I can make this better, or if you have any questions for me personally, I'll get back to you. Reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is @JeremyJohnMary. You can also comment if you're watching on YouTube. You can just comment below. All right. Thanks for listening and have an epic week.